learning, not just at the very ground level, but also your ability to assemble knowledge from different disciplines to put them together. I think that will be a very hard sought after skill set. For alpha researchers, the question is, can you correctly identify when a crowded trade is going to become a trend and you take advantage of that ride?
I'm Steve Cummins, and this is Careers Cast Voices. With my co-host Marcio Saito, we deconstruct the playbooks of CEOs, educators, and disruptors to give you the edge in your professional journey. And today we're talking with Jendy Sue, a quantitative portfolio manager at Cubist. She describes her journey from starting out as a liberal arts major through gaining engineering qualifications at Caltech, MIT, and Stanford. And we talk about some of the key pivot points that led her through her early career to where she is now in the financial industry. So Jendy, thanks for joining us today on Careers Cast. Looking forward to talking to you about your, I would say, non-linear educational and professional career.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Marcio, for inviting me.
I'm looking forward to it. So you have a very interesting educational background. You started out with a liberal arts degree, then you got technical qualifications from, I believe, Caltech, MIT, and Stanford, including an MS in computer science. So you obviously have a mind both for STEM and the arts. I'm curious, how has that background influenced your career?
It influenced me a lot. I can go back a little bit before I started college. When I was in China, I've shown some aptitude for STEM. I won some math competitions at age 10, but my parents were both in liberal arts endeavors. And then at the time in China, a career in STEM wasn't considered very economically promising. So they've been gently nudging me to to focus more on learning English, learning about business, learning about liberal arts. My mother was a history scholar. My father was doing international imports and exports. So when I decided to come to the US, I actually initially had the dream of focusing on comparative literature. I wanted to be an ambassador of two cultures, the East and the West. And that's how I landed at a liberal arts college called Whitman in a fine town of Walla Walla, Washington. But as soon as I got there, I discovered two things. Number one was that my English was not nearly as good to be a serious English major. And second, a career in the US in literature or English is not great for international students. So then the question became, what do I do with myself? Luckily, Whitman being a liberal arts college, they have what they call this 3-2 combined engineering program between Whitman and Caltech. So to save money, I crammed 3 years of STEM classes into 2 and transferred to Caltech after 2 years with Whitman. That's how I got started. Caltech was a very different institute, both in terms of academic rigor and as well as just the overall attitude towards scientific research. I definitely felt more at home at Caltech, but I'm also very grateful for the experience at Whitman because it forced me to learn English fast.
For sure. So you transferred into Caltech, and then you moved on to MIT and Stanford. I'm betting it's a very different feel when you're inside each of those. So, did each of them play a different role in your career and your personal development?
Definitely, they're different and they play different roles because honestly, until Caltech, I was fairly under-challenged in most of my classes. But as soon as I got to Caltech, I realized everybody there was smarter than me. And Friday night, when I wanted to study, I no longer had to feel guilty because everybody else was going to parties. So in that sense, Caltech was both a whole new world and a returning to home. I feel like MIT just having a wide range of offering in engineering courses was really good. I was studying chemical engineering, but I was able to take, let's say, programming classes. I was hard as hell, but I enjoyed it. Stanford, different feel. Weather is way nicer. Those kids are really lucky. But also at Stanford, there's definitely, I could feel there's like a pulse to entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Right. So yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. So when you came out of Stanford, I think then you went into a software engineering role.
Yeah.
but I know now you're in the financial industry. So I'm always curious how people get from sort of their first job out of college to where they are now. Can you talk a little bit about that path?
Yeah, I think my first job at Oracle as a software engineer was frankly more of a practical concern than a true calling, so to speak. I was first generation immigrant. I was on a student visa, right? After school, I needed to find a job, but also hopefully it's something that I'm good at and it pays reasonably well. And that's how I landed in software engineering at Oracle because at the time, when I started working, the dot-com bubble just bursted, right? There are not very many jobs available. But I got bored pretty quickly. I was also just not very passionate about enterprise software, so to speak. I didn't know what that was about, right? So
Steve and I have been talking about passion and the importance of passion.
yeah, frankly, there's a part of me that says, I don't care. I don't know who's using it. You know, I'm not tapped into the business world. I have no idea what my users' experiences are like, right? Because when you are starting out as an entry level engineer in such a big corporation, you're just focusing on a very tiny piece of the overall machinery. And I had no idea what is the impact of what I'm doing. So I felt disconnected from my career. So that's when I started looking around, just asking people, hey, what are other career paths that are possible? It turns out that a lot of my fellow engineering or physics and math students have gone on to Wall Street. And they were saying, you know, hey, this is a place where you have to give it your all. And you may have a 55, 60% hit rate, being right. And I was like, okay, that felt like home, you know, that felt good. So that's when I decided to switch. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely want to dig into how you made that switch. But something you said earlier really caught my attention, which was in your first job, you really weren't challenged. And I've heard this quite a bit in the last couple of years from people that are in their first job out of college. And the word that often comes up is bored, right? Any thoughts from your experience on how maybe we could do a better job there?
Yeah, now that I manage people, I have team and, you know, I have entry level people and I look at them. Some of them are bored and some of them aren't. So the question is, what make the difference?
Right.
My initial thoughts is that more often than not, the person who's not bored has a much better grasp of the bigger picture of what problem ultimately they're trying to solve. Let's go back to the Oracle piece, right? If I have a good understanding of what that piece of business software is about, I see what the user is using it for and the revenue it's generating, right? Then I will have a much better understanding of, oh, from there, then it's whittled down to this one feature that I'm working on. If I can create a connection between what I'm doing to the ultimate goal, there are many levels to constantly create challenges for myself, right? This is one thing I found for newer people. Like if I just give them this, these are the specs, you do this, and they'll come back and they finish it all, right? And then the ones that see the bigger picture will come back and say, I did this, Jendy, but then I thought about, you know, what we ultimately want to deliver. They say, oh, maybe we can try this. You know, those are some of the things I wish I had done differently. I probably would be more proactive, right? Because we cannot control like what environment or what first job, what kind of mentorship program looks like on day one, right? But I would take a lot more initiative in asking, so what am I doing? Can you just show me the bigger picture? Where is this thing going to land? Once I establish that understanding, I think that the job will become hopefully much less boring.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Sorry, Steve. Yeah, and I think that's becoming even more important now, right? With a lot of jobs being remote, we get less mentorship by osmosis, right?
Yeah.
And it's really hard for a young professional to get to that big picture if they are not curious, if they're not asking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the thing I like about your advice is you're looking at it from both angles as well, right? So the responsibility is on the individual to seek the bigger picture, but also it should be on the company and the manager and the mentor
Yes.
to pull them along with them, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it has to happen for both. That's where we get the best results.
So back to your move to the financial world. So what are some of the steps that you had to take to be able to make that transition?
Yeah, the first couple of years from AOL to BlackRock was quite a climb. I had the engineering background, right? And I was hired into BlackRock as a quant developer in the alpha generating team, just helping the researcher implement his research pieces. So I, frankly, the math or the engineering piece, once I understood what the problem was about, was okay, manageable. But just understanding this problem took a long time because finance, especially investment, is by nature very complicated, social as well as mathematical problem, right? So I took the CFA exam, Chartered Financial Analyst. It's 3 levels. Eventually, you sort of prove to the world you know something about finance, right?
Right.
It wasn't like, for me, it wasn't so much I need that title, but it was the process of trying to get that title. I had to study all these things at a regular, steady pace. But that's not enough. The progression in improving my understanding of the financial investment program, I think of it as actually as it's a lifelong endeavor. I'm still learning every day about the new investment themes, everything. What I don't know, I also ask the people, senior investors, managers in my company, what are some of the books they like to read? What are some of the financial blogs they follow? That gives me some idea of these are what serious investors are thinking about. Also I read tons of academic papers.
Yeah, and I think it's an important part because I think there's a tendency, you have your degree and you can think, well, that's it. I'm educated, right? I've done my education. Now I'm working. And so much of being successful and progressing is the lifelong learning, right?
Jendy, I believe Nassim Taleb, the author of The Black Swan, was in the same line of work as you before he became a best-selling author. And he wrote about our inability to use past experience to predict the future. But isn't that what you're supposed to do in your main job?
Well, let me first explain what I do. What is a quant portfolio manager? So I have a team of people whose previous endeavors include some STEM disciplines. In my company, you will see many physicists, mathematicians, or software programmers. What we do is we write mathematical models based on the data that we can extract from the market and figure out some pricing inefficiencies and try to take advantage of that. So on a day-to-day basis, I still write a lot of code. I have to do some math, and we let the computer algos take care of it for the rest of the journey, investment. Yes, I think Nasi is a very forward, deep thinker. His book, or like very large systemic events. We're not good at forecasting that. If you look at most of the quantitative investment disciplines, we tend to, number one, try to forecast what's going to happen maybe in the next minute, hour, day, maybe a month. We're really just trying to forecast, hey, is the stock or is this bond's price going to move within a certain range with what confidence? Actually, a quantitative portfolio, which tends to place many, many bets over a short horizon, we're actually more, to quote his word, anti-fragile, dealing with a lot of the systemic shifts. I'm definitely acutely aware that the biggest risk is usually the risk that we don't see. We don't even know that we know. And it's something that keeps us humble as quants, that just because we can write down math, just because we can write computer algo, does not give us any more confidence than a human that we know what we're doing.
Thank you.
So interestingly enough, there's a lot of talk about AI at the moment, how it's going to change people's jobs, take people's jobs. couple of things you mentioned in describing your role. You talk about how you still code quite a bit. There's a lot of math involved. So I can imagine you're already seeing how AI is gonna have some impact. Can you talk about what you're seeing there?
Yeah, definitely. All of a sudden, AI makes it easier for people who are not like super serious programmers to use code to do a lot of things. It's really empowered a lot of people all of a sudden. What does that mean for my profession? I will first address for junior people because this is where I feel like a lot of the pain points are. We used to hire junior people to come in and then do some of what we think is maybe repetitive work and have them automate or have them do it over and over. But all of a sudden, we found that AI can do it for us, right? So it creates less of an incentive for firms to hire people with no prior experience. I think this really highlights the importance for one of my earlier points. We really need to understand the bigger picture. Because what AI enables us to do is we can hand off the minor details to the machinery. That frees us up to spend more time to think about how different components work together to create what we want to do. So when you're just starting out, you don't have that good understanding of the big picture. But if you show an aptitude of learning, not just at the very ground level, but also your ability to assemble knowledge from different disciplines to put them together, I think that will be a very hard sought after skill set. And then for senior people, AI is very good at giving you lots and lots of options. I think one skill set that will be important is, given all these options, can you efficiently validate and figure out where it is BSing, hallucinating, right? And identify where is actually doing the right thing, right? Can you design systems to cross-check itself? Or more importantly, I think, can you find a way to look at the ground truth, quote unquote, from an alternative independent source? If we humans completely rely on AI in a very trusting, like blindfolded way, we'll quickly enter into an echo chamber. Things will feed on themselves, and then truths will sort of, quote unquote, pseudo truths will sort quickly, become well accepted fact when maybe in fact it was not. And last but not least, in my profession, I look at what AI's answers as kind of the new benchmark for what the crowd is going to look at, right? Because I'm an alpha searcher, and by definition, I make money by knowing something that other people don't, or I bet on something that other people don't, and I have to be right. Then I have to look at, okay, that's where maybe the general consensus is going to go, right? How do I game it? How do I take advantage of it? So it's a fun game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jendy, the key to delivering results in our job is identifying market imperfections. And if everyone is using the same machine, do we approach a perfect market?
So I think, Marcio, what you're describing is that everybody is using AI, right? I think we will definitely see a lot more crowded trades, right? We will see a lot more volatility in the market because everybody's betting the same way, and then someday the underlying machinery changes, and then everybody's going the other way, right? We're actually already seeing some of that in the stock market. So for alpha researchers, right, the question is, can you correctly identify when a crowded trade is going to become a trend and you take advantage of that ride? But my point is, just because everybody's getting on the same train, in my humble opinion, doesn't mean the market is becoming more efficient. In fact, it might create actually more price and under intrinsic value dislocation. So I think there's still ample opportunity for quants. So we'll see.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot you have there around AI, whereas for a long time, the route to success has been getting very smart in a certain discipline, right? Now it seems as though this broader background tied in with curiosity and continuing education all comes together. You move from liberal arts to engineering and then to computer science. How did you reconcile that, and how do you still reconcile that? You sort of have this tension between the two sides. Has that come together as sort of a personal philosophy for you in how you've built your career?
I personally think of liberal arts and STEM as less conflicting or at odds with each other than maybe the general public thinks. I see it as more of an exploration of knowledge, and whether it's expressed in words in numeric systems, underneath all that is a pursuit of something that hopefully you'll get better at over time. I have a more kind of a holistic view, thinking of ultimately underneath these are all tied very well together. But to your question of my career, I think with quant finance, I sort of found a happy medium where on a day-to-day kind of you look at my specific task, it's very disciplined, accuracy driven. I always tell people, hey, for us quants, the difference between a strategy that's 95% good versus 99 is one is winning and the other one you have to shut it down, right? But on the other hand, I always have to keep in the back of my head, is my current endeavor overlooking something that in the history of mankind that could happen? Because hey, the great financial crisis, right? A lot of people got it wrong. But let's not forget there's a movie, or there's actually a book by Michael Lewis that called The Big Short. There are at least four, really smart individuals that got it right. So they are able to actually look at history, look at, human behavior and be like, hey, this is not right. So that's where I have to use my prior experience in liberal arts to do that, to kind of incorporate, hey, where is the human behavior piece of it? Where is the political piece of it? I think actually with AI, the boundary between liberal arts and STEM is going to be further blurred. Just because a lot of stuff that you think you can do, if you have a vision, if you can put things together, all of a sudden you don't actually have to know like all the nitty gritty details about the underlying program. So I feel like, this may be the future trend.
Since curiosity is the thing that comes up here, so one way to help with curiosity is reading books. We've already mentioned a couple here, Black Swan, you mentioned the Big Short. Any other favorite books that you would recommend people to take a look at to help broaden their horizons?
Yeah, I would say one of my all-time favorite is Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow by Dan Kahneman. He's a Nobel laureate. His seminal work is in looking at the biases in our human psychology, right? I think it's especially for us quants. It's a lot of times a humbling reminder that just because we know math, just because we can write code, doesn't mean we know better. And we constantly have to look at our own biases in picking one model versus another, or in deciding this signal is going to work or not, right? And a lot of the times, these are more important but less quantitative decisions. And I always have to do self-introspection and say, hey, am I just really having a cognitive dissonance moment, right? In coming to making my decisions. So I highly recommend that book.
Okay, perfect. Well, we have a mini reading list just from this one episode, so that's great. Well, everybody should rush out to
the Black Swan. Actually, on Nassim Taleb. Another one I would recommend of his book is Anti-Fragile, because I feel that Black Swan definitely it's more thought provoking, but Anti-Fragile, in my opinion, is more actionable. Because his thesis in that is create a system that can actually grow at times of stress in all these little places. And I feel like in general, that's more actionable for us, humans on a day-to-day basis. So
and translate that make an analogy into the career world. Being anti-fragile is about becoming more resilient, right? And And
Yes.
we
Yeah.
need to be prepared to changes in how we group, right?
Yes.
Liberal art jobs and STEM jobs and engineering
Mm-hmm.
jobs, because that taxonomy might change and it's probably going to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's more like, hey, it's like, okay, I know I'm not good at predicting what I'm going to do 10 years from now. Even though I've been doing what I'm doing for almost 20 years, I'm not good at that. But can I make day-to-day decisions to position myself such that I can take advantage of new opportunities that come in? And what I'm doing today, in case something that doesn't pan out, can I have more options, right? Can I be more anti-fragile? So I like that book quite a bit. And Michael Lewis, I like all of his books. Some of those are very easy read, very entertaining. Yeah.
Well, and the advantage of the Michael Lewis books is they make movies out of them as well. So
I
if you're
know.
not a reader, you have
Yeah, you
another,
can
another way to
exactly.
access it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Zhendi, thanks so much for talking with us on Careers
Mhm.
Cast Voices, sharing your experience. If people want to know more and connect with you, I'm assuming LinkedIn is the best place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Marcio, another interesting conversation for us here on Careers Cast. What are your thoughts having spoken to Zhendi?
I think that's a common pattern. Our careers are not linear. We always pivot and change and get lost along the way. But I think in her trajectory, the way she shifted and built her career is interesting, because I don't think she left anything behind, right? She was bringing along the experiences, the knowledge she acquired. And it feels like she's in a place today where she combines a lot of her early interest in math and science, a lot of her parents' influence to understand liberal arts and social impact, and then bringing this together in the financial markets. I think is a good way of thinking of a career. Continue to bring your unique personal set of skills and knowledge to integrate everything you learn, and see what were the things that caught your attention.
I mean, certainly a similar idea of, and we've talked to several people now in this series that have that non-traditional path, right? The first thing you set out to do when you're in your teens or early 20s doesn't necessarily determine your future path. The other thing that resonated with me, her thoughts on AI and this concern of, it's cutting out those junior level jobs, which I think to our audience is something to worry about. And then how do you overcome that? This idea of being curious, being open to different approaches. I think that's great advice for people. So if you have enjoyed this episode, this is, I think, the 5th in our series now. Would be great if you would like and subscribe it. We would love if you could leave a review or a comment as well, so that we know that that we're actually having some impact out there. So appreciate you listening, and please tune in for the next episode.
Thank you.